let's go to Lance, because you've been watching a lot of film of Lance, and you have very strong opinions of what his comparison is. And I haven't heard anyone else make this comparison, and I think it's dead on. So why don't you tell me what you think of Lance? Because I think some people like him better than Fields, and you're like, what? How?
That I don't get, other than being maybe a little more like Fields' throwing motion is maybe a little longer, or not a little longer, it's a little slower. Lance has got a quicker release. I don't understand how you can like Lance over Justin Fields. Like, the only thing people say is upside, but I would argue that Fields is every bit as fast, he's every bit as strong, he has every bit as strong an arm, and he has data and substance that you can actually look at that's substantive over an expended period of time where you can actually see who he is. With Trey Lance, what are you looking at? And one of the things I think that's been weird is that I think Trey Lance's coverage in this throughout this entire process thus far has been optimum. We've seen like false media narratives be crept up on each and every one of the quarterbacks outside of Trevor Lawrence, who's kind of been protected and just been out of the way through this entire process, that have all actually applied to Trey Lance as much as they apply to those other players. So let's start with Mac Jones, right? People bring up the team he played with, the protection he received, the receivers he had. Okay, well, Trey Lance plays in the FCS for the Alabama of the FCS. NDSU has won like the last 4 FCS championships. They're a powerhouse. They are a powerhouse. Trey Lance by far had the best protection of all these quarterbacks. I don't think you can disagree with that. And okay, Trey Lance's receivers, you don't know their names. You don't know Devonta Smith. You don't know Jalen Waddle. But relative to the corners they're going against in the FCS, they're all much better. So his supporting cast, they're like a Power 5 school playing in the FCS. That's one.
Go ahead.
With Zach Wilson, we hear the level of competition, right? Who did BYU play? And with the protection he received. Again, Trey Lance received the best protection of all the quarterbacks, and he played in the FCS, which is the worst conference of all these quarterbacks. He played worse competition than Zach Wilson. That's just a fact. And then finally with Justin Fields, people say Justin Fields is a one-read quarterback. I don't know where that comes from. I don't think I think you have questions on how decisive Justin Fields is at the top of his drop, but you don't think he's a one-read quarterback. Right.
No,
right.
You can see him, but Lance
Yeah, with Lance, I'm not saying he's a one-read quarterback, but you don't get enough. Like, a lot of his throws, he threw the ball 18 times a game, okay? He threw the ball 18 times a game over the season. So that's not even going to happen in the NFL. Like, even if they were up 30-0, you expect the guy to throw the ball more than 18 times in the NFL. And in those 18 times, a lot of them were schemed up throws off play action, where a lot of it has only one defined read. So, like, okay, how do you tell that he can actually function in a drop back pass game and go through multiple progressions 20 times a game?
True. Real quick. Don't mean to cut you off, but to add to your point, people say, well, he played 17 games in college. So did Mac Jones. A lot of these guys that don't have experience.
He had double the pass attempts.
The dude threw 280 passes. I mean, like Kyle Trask would throw 280 passes in like 6 games.
Here's another example.
Like 6 games.
Here's another example, okay?
6 games.
DJ Ungalele, another QB Collective guy, 5-star recruit, went to the same high school as Josh Rosen. He filled in when Trevor Lawrence had COVID, okay? He had 2 starts last year, and he played just about every game because Clemson would just basically buzzsaw everybody in the ACC. And he had 1 game where he played he threw the ball more than 10 times. So in 2 starts, he threw the ball 35 plus times both starts, and he had 117 attempts on the season. Grant, he needs to play just half of next year, and then if he sits the next 2 years, you're going to call him a top 5 pick because you've seen 280 throws of him?
It's unreal. It's unreal that that his draft stock could be this high off of 280 throws. No one's 280 throws of that.
This is unprecedented.
No one.
And this is the kind of stuff, if you remember, that people said it, like, look, Trey Lance is more gifted than the guy I'm going to name. So don't come yell at me. He is more gifted. He's got a stronger arm. He's faster. He's a better runner. But the guy I'm going to name was pretty darn gifted coming out of college too. And he had only 13 starts, and he still had 572 college throws compared to Trey Lance's 288. And that's Mitchell Trubisky.
That's right.
And he was picked over Deshaun Watson. This is the Trey Lance, Justin Fields conversation is Mitchell Trubisky, Deshaun Watson to me all over again. How is Trubisky better than Deshaun Watson? How? Just like that, how is Trey Lance better other than having a smoother delivery than Justin Fields? How is he better than Justin Fields?
How? I don't see how Trey Lance is better than Kellen Mond, but that's a different story for another day. I'm with you on this. I don't see how you can look at a dude's 280 pass attempts and be like, dude, top 5 pick right there. I mean, even Trubisky had what, 500, 450?
572.
Yeah, 572. And again, tell people the similarities between Trubisky and Lance in terms of mechanics.
Well, this is not me. This is Dan Orlovsky. He put it on ESPN, and I remember seeing this, and it's interesting because the nice thing about it is he's an expert. He knows quarterback mechanics. He's been a quarterback, so he knows these things really well, and you get to learn something like this, and you go back and watch, and he talked about how Trey Lance's success in the NFL is going to be about his back foot because it's straight when he throws the ball. And he said this is the thing, in his opinion, that's plagued Mitchell Trubisky's entire career in terms of accuracy issues in the NFL. And then if you go back and watch Trey Lance's footwork the one year he played at NDSU and Mitchell Trubisky's footwork the one year he started at UNC, like, okay, they're not the same player, but when he makes a comparison like that and you go see it, it's hard not to see the similarities in their lower body mechanics. Now, Lance's trajectory could be totally different. Trubisky went to a bad situation with the Bears. You know how I feel about the Bears, and Trubisky was also less talented than Lance, so I'm not calling him the next Trubisky. I'm not even saying he's similar to Trubisky. I'm just saying that people need to slow down a little bit because the hype train with him is getting a little out of hand. And it's actually bothering me that his hype train is going up so high and people are getting so low on Justin Fields. It makes no sense.
Real quick, do you think the Niners take Lance?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
The starts thing is so real, right? Even the 17 starts with Mac Jones is scary because if you remember, you and I were talking about this. I can't think of, outside of Kyler Murray, who's maybe one of the better athletes, or if not the best athletes in the NFL, just sole athletes. I mean, he was a top 10 pick in baseball, top 10 pick in football. There's not a quarterback that I would call a top 10, top 20 quarterback in the NFL that had less than 20, 21 starts in college.
That's right. And people
I'm trying
like
to
Justin
think.
Herbert, they're like, well, he came out of nowhere. He had a ton of starts in college.
He started 2 years, 2 full seasons.
Yeah, and I think he was playing as a freshman. He played a lot of football in college.
Even Zach Wilson, like for all the Zach Wilson only had 1 year. He only had 1 year where you were aware of him. He had 2 years where he did play a lot of football.
That's right.
Joe Burrow, same thing. He started 14 games the year before he had his national championship year?